If a disgruntled valet had not raided a Hollywood director's closet in the summer of 1921, the most infamous unsolved murder in California history would likely have been solved in 24 hours. Instead, a stolen hat, a missing wardrobe, and a forged check set off a bizarre chain of paranoia that allowed a killer to slip away into the Los Angeles fog. This is the story of William Desmond Taylor. In the early 1920s, he was the undisputed king of the silent film era, serving as the president of the Motion Picture Directors Association. He was handsome, wealthy, erudite, and universally respected, a beacon of high culture in a young industry desperately trying to legitimize itself. But on the morning of February 2, 1922, he was found dead on the floor of his luxurious Alvarado Court mansion. What happened inside that house over the next few hours remains the greatest textbook example of a Hollywood cover-up. Studio executives burned evidence in the fireplace before the police even arrived. A doctor completely missed a point-blank gunshot wound. And the LAPD spent their most crucial window of time chasing a phantom wearing the dead man's stolen clothes. To understand the sheer scale of this cover-up, we have to look inside Alvarado Court, located in the trendy Westlake neighborhood of Los Angeles. In 1922, this courtyard apartment complex was the epicenter of the Hollywood elite. Taylor's bungalow was an opulent two-story home filled with grand pianos, rare literature, and dangerous Prohibition-era secrets. It was a vault of Hollywood scandals, hiding secret love letters from famous actresses, financial blackmail material, and stashes of bootleg liquor. At 7:30 a.m. on February 2nd, Taylor's newly hired valet, Henry Peavy, arrived to begin his morning routine. Upon entering the living room, he found his boss lying flat on the rug, his body perfectly straight with his arms neatly aligned by his sides as if he were resting. Peavy panicked, running out into the courtyard screaming down the street for assistance. This is where the timeline of the investigation shatters completely. Before the Los Angeles Police Department could even secure the property, the studio fixers arrived to control the narrative. Charles Ayton, the powerful production chief at Paramount Pictures, rushed into the mansion alongside an array of studio lawyers and publicists. By the time the police finally showed up, the crime scene resembled a crowded cocktail party rather than a homicide investigation. Actors, studio executives, and curious neighbors like silent star Douglas MacLean were casually walking through the bungalow, trampling footprints and touching furniture. But it gets worse. A mysterious man identifying himself as a doctor emerged from the crowd and briefly examined Taylor's body right there on the floor. He confidently declared to the onlookers and the initial officers that the director had succumbed to a sudden stomach hemorrhage. The police inexplicably believed him. The coroner was called, the body was rolled over to be placed on a stretcher, and only then did the investigators notice the massive pool of blood hidden underneath him. Taylor had not died of an illness. He had been shot directly in the back with a .38 caliber revolver at point-blank range. By the time the police realized they were dealing with a murder, the mysterious doctor had vanished into the Los Angeles streets, his true identity lost to history forever. Meanwhile, the studio executives had not just been passive observers. Multiple witnesses later reported seeing Ayton and his associates actively sorting through Taylor's desks and throwing bundles of private documents directly into the fireplace. They were systematically destroying evidence to protect the bankable reputations of Paramount's top contract stars. Despite the heavily corrupted crime scene, the police initially believed they had an open and shut case, all because of a bizarre sequence of events that had occurred 7 months prior. Before hiring Peavy, Taylor had employed a different valet named Edward Sands. Sands was a professional grifter and military deserter who utilized multiple aliases. In the summer of 1921, while Taylor was traveling across Europe, Sands systematically looted his employer. He forged Taylor's signature on blank checks, stole thousands of dollars, wrecked the director's custom automobile, and disappeared. But Sands did not just steal money. He stole Taylor's literal identity. He thoroughly cleaned out the mansion's closets, walking away with Taylor's custom-tailored suits, his jewelry, and a highly distinct collection of expensive, custom-made hats. When the murder was discovered, the LAPD immediately cast Sands as the prime suspect. It was a logical conclusion. Sands had a criminal history, a clear financial motive, and a track record of malicious betrayal. A nationwide manhunt was launched for the rogue valet. Here lies the devastating twist that derailed the entire investigation. The theft of the wardrobe completely blinded the detectives. For weeks, police departments across the country chased down sightings of a man matching Taylor's physical build, who was spotted wearing his stolen, highly recognizable clothes, and his unique fedoras. Every time an informant reported seeing the distinct custom hat, the LAPD poured massive resources and manpower into tracking the lead. Because they were so hyper-focused on finding the stolen garments, they ignored the immediate physical and circumstantial evidence remaining inside the bungalow. They squandered the critical first 48 hours of the investigation hunting a ghost. Edward Sands was never captured, and modern forensic historians agree that he was likely hundreds of miles away when the trigger was pulled. The stolen clothes were nothing more than a historical red herring that granted the real killer days of uninterrupted time to permanently vanish and eliminate their tracks. With the valet lead dead, investigators were forced to look back inside the social circle of the Alvarado Court mansion, uncovering a volatile web of obsession and vice. Two primary suspects emerged, both of them among the most famous faces in the world. The first was Mabel Normand, a comedic icon and close creative partner of Charlie Chaplin. Normand was the last confirmed person to see Taylor alive. On the evening of February 1st, she had visited his home to collect some books. Taylor had walked her out to her waiting limousine at approximately 7:45 p.m. Just minutes after her departure, nearby residents reported hearing a sharp sound resembling a car backfiring, which was actually the fatal gunshot. Normand was known to have a severe, escalating addiction to cocaine, and Taylor had recently been working with federal prosecutors to have her primary suppliers arrested. This raised a terrifying question. Was Taylor assassinated by a ruthless drug syndicate to protect their Hollywood pipeline, or did a private confrontation between the director and the actress turn fatal? While the drug angle was compelling, the physical evidence discovered inside the house pointed toward an even darker domestic nightmare involving a 19-year-old superstar named Mary Miles Minter. Hidden deep inside one of Taylor's leather riding boots, detectives unearthed a secret cache of intensely passionate, heavily coded love letters written by Minter. Upstairs in the bedroom, they discovered a silk nightgown monogrammed with her initials. Minter was dangerously, pathologically obsessed with the 50-year-old director, viewing him as her romantic savior. However, Minter lived under the absolute, iron fist of her tyrannical stage mother, Charlotte Shelby. Shelby was a notoriously volatile woman who strictly managed her daughter's multi-million-dollar career and fortune. Crucially, Shelby owned a .38 caliber revolver, the exact caliber used to kill Taylor, and possessed a supply of rare, obsolete ammunition that perfectly matched the bullet extracted from the director's spine. If Minter abandoned her career to elope with Taylor, Shelby would lose her entire source of wealth and power. When the police eventually attempted to test Shelby's weapon, they discovered she had mysteriously disposed of the revolver in a remote Louisiana bayou, claiming she simply no longer wanted it around. The district attorney at the time, Thomas Woolwine, happened to be a close personal friend of Shelby. Despite an overwhelming mountain of circumstantial evidence, he continuously blocked any attempts to formally charge her. Rumors persisted for decades that Shelby had utilized her vast wealth to pay off high-ranking officials within the DA's office to permanently bury the case files. The murder of William Desmond Taylor effectively broke early Hollywood. Coming directly on the heels of other massive industry scandals, it exposed a deep moral rot beneath the glamorous facade of the studio system. The resulting public outrage was so severe that it threatened the financial survival of the entire film industry. To save themselves, the major studios banded together to enforce strict moral censorship guidelines that would control American cinema for decades. The studio executives who burned the evidence in Taylor's fireplace faced zero legal repercussions for obstruction of justice. Mabel Normand's career never recovered from the stain of the investigation. She died of tuberculosis a few years later, her reputation in ruins. Mary Miles Minter's wholesome image was instantly ruined, forcing her out of the industry overnight into a reclusive life marked by bitter lawsuits against her own mother. Charlotte Shelby lived out her remaining years in extreme luxury, carrying the truth of that night to her grave. Today, if you visit the Westlake area looking for the scene of the crime, you will find nothing. The Alvarado Court bungalows were completely demolished, deliberately leveling the physical footprint of the tragedy. Today, an unremarkable shopping center and a paved parking lot occupy the space where one of Hollywood's greatest pioneers bled to death. The police chased a phantom in a stolen hat, the studios burned the paper trail, and the city bulldozed the walls. A century later, the murder remains officially unsolved, a permanent monument to a time when Hollywood realized it was far easier to bury the truth than to let a star fall.